Growing up, I really thought that money would buy me happiness. All my parents really wanted was for me to live a life that they couldn't live. I really hated that performative nature where I feel like I'm not making something that is valuable, but I'm making something that looks valuable.
Hey everyone, it's Rooi. I've been meaning to make this video for a while now, but it's taken me a bit to just organize my thoughts around the matter because it's a complicated thing for me to talk about. But I thought that it would be important for me to make this video because one, my channel pretty much revolves around my thoughts and experiences of my 20s, and I feel like what I'm going to talk about in this video is a very core, formative part of that experience and my life in general. And number two, I see that there are quite a few videos out there now of people sharing their experiences leaving their corporate jobs. But I still think that this is a relatively uncommon experience. At least it's definitely not the default conventional path to abandon your successful career. So in my journey of doing so, there are a lot of moments where I felt lonely and misunderstood and just generally lost. So I'm hoping that if there's somebody out there that was or is in a similar position to mine, they can feel a little less alone, and maybe even hearing me talk about my own particular experience will be helpful in some way. If you're just here for the plot summary, let me give that to you real quick. Basically, I went to MIT for my undergrad, graduated, worked as a product designer in the tech industry for a couple years, and then I quit. And now I'm 25, unemployed, and living with my parents. Great. If I were to answer, how did I end up here? Well, I think it would be useful for us to backtrack to the beginning of college when I was 17. At that age and just throughout my whole childhood, I never really had like a concrete dream. There wasn't a specific thing that I wanted to become as an adult. But one thing I did know was that I wanted to make cool things. And so when I had to choose a major, I chose computer science because that way I can make cool digital things. I've always been a artistic, creative kind of kid. I always liked drawing, and I saw the digital screen as kind of like a canvas, but even better because I can make interactable things. And if you have an internet connection, then you can share those interactable digital things all over the world. I thought that was cool. Now, I didn't know anything about computer science at that age. I know that CS is kind of the major to major in these days, but even back then when I was in high school, which was not like too long ago, I'm not that old, nobody around me was majoring in computer science or had a career in computer science. So back then, I just thought computer science equals programming, and I liked the idea of learning how to program so that I can make my own digital things. Now, at some point in college, I started to understand exactly what a career in computer science entails, and I learned that if you were to get a corporate job with a CS degree, that means that you will be a software engineer. And then I learned that at a company, software engineers are not the ones that decide what the digital things they're making look like, or generally how it functions from a user's perspective. And the people that actually make those decisions are the product designers. So I realized, I guess I don't want to be a software engineer. And I realized that's what I wanted to do instead. So I switched my major to design. Now, looking back, I realized that a big flaw in my logic is that I was strictly looking at my major in terms of what kind of corporate job can a degree in this major get me. And that's because I just didn't really know that there was any other option for what to do with life outside of working at a company. I think looking back, it would have been useful either way, even if I stayed in computer science, because then I'll learn things that are useful for when I want to make my own things. But back then, I wasn't thinking about making my own things. I was thinking about working at a company. Either way, I don't think it matters because honestly, for me, school is not the most effective way for me to learn skills. And I can learn to program or I can learn to design outside of school. So yeah, but anyways, my first work experiences were during college in the form of internships, and I actually loved all of my internships. This isn't always the case, but in all the internships I had, I was given a lot of agency. Now just kind of trusted to do my own part. And so those positive experiences made me very excited to graduate and get to work full time. Now, when it came time to graduate and start applying for jobs, I did try to get a job at a big tech company, you know, the FANG companies, as the tech people say. FANG stands for Facebook, Amazon, or is it Apple? Netflix and Google? It's kind of interesting that Netflix is in there too. Anyways, I applied to those places because it would look good on my resume, and that was it. I wasn't very compelled to work at these places because why would I want to design something that's already been designed, you know? Well, anyways, they didn't want me either. So I ended up working in the startup space, which I was so excited about. I love the idea of working at an early stage startup where basically I have a blank canvas and I get to really cook. Also, the people in the startup space are all like very passionate, starry-eyed people that are like very gung-ho about their work. And I'm also a very passionate person. So I felt like I found my niche. So I started working at this fancy startup based in New York City, making that big tech salary and all that. But as you probably already guessed, I started to really not enjoy working there, which is an understatement actually. I was miserable. Outside of work hours, I couldn't do anything really. I just doom scrolled, watched Netflix, ate junk food, ordered food all the time, and that included weekdays, weekends, and holidays. Even when I had time off, I just didn't have the energy to do anything else, really. I was not taking good care of myself. I had trouble sleeping. I was stressed, crying, and frustrated all the time. I felt like I was dying. The way that I described how I felt back then to someone I knew is that if my life is a garden, I feel like I'm not able to water any of my plants. So they're all withering and dying. And I really feel like those 2 years that I worked as a product designer cut years off of my lifespan. And now it's not like most people find their corporate jobs super exciting and fulfilling. A lot of people hate their jobs, but I didn't see people being literally this miserable and feeling like they're dying. So why did I feel so particularly miserable? Well, there were a lot of different reasons. So let me cover the surface level ones first. I don't know if it's specific to startups, but the founders, the bosses of startups are so anxious. They're very anxious people because, well, they need to keep this company afloat. So I understand that part. And also they just don't want to fail. And if you're a designer at a company, you probably relate to this, but all that top level anxiety really trickles down and is let out onto the designers. There is just hell of a lot of micromanagement and lack of respect for designers at these tech companies. Actually, I see this a lot with the bigger companies too. They just cycle through designers because designers are getting burnt out so quickly all the time. They just get a lot of shit. Nobody lets us cook. Even though we're the experts in designing, everyone wants to tell us how to do our jobs. So there was the stress of having to deal with all of that bullshit that comes with just being a designer. Honestly, I just see it all the time. Even designers that have way more experience than me and have worked at like all these flashy companies, I see them also getting disrespected and micromanaged. It's crazy. And add on to that I am young and a female, and yeah, that just makes you like the punching bag of the company. But honestly, even outside of all of that bullshit, the core reason why I was so miserable is because as a product designer, I always felt like I was designing not for the user of the product that I'm designing, but for the investor and sometimes for the boss. I really hated that performative nature of working at a company where I feel like I'm not making something that is valuable, but I'm making something that looks valuable. To who? To the investor. It was very confusing to me because one of the big attractive things about startups is that they usually have very motivating, inspiring visions. And so you join because you want to be part of that vision, but as you start working there, you realize you're never getting to that vision. What I realized about myself and why all of this sat so wrong with me is that creating, as cheesy as it sounds, is an act of love for me. For me personally, I create things and ideas that I believe in some way. So it just felt so wrong to take what is an act of love for me and use that as a tool to feed a machine that I disagree with. I hadn't realized until I went through all of this that this thing, I don't know what to name it. I guess, creative freedom was a value that was so dear to me, and it might be one of the most important value in my life. I didn't know it was that deep either until I went through this. And you know, a lot of people do value agency, creative freedom, things like this as well, but they're able to make peace with working in corporate and feeling like a cog in a machine. And I feel like the reason for that is because they have other bigger values in their life. For example, most of the people that I know that are working at these cushy tech jobs, they take a lot of vacations. They take like multiple vacations a year overseas. And so I imagine that being able to go on these trips, creating amazing memories with loved ones is a big source of fulfillment in their life. And so they value their corporate job, which affords them these experiences and this fulfillment. But I don't really have things like that. I don't really care that much for vacations. I think they're cool, but they're also kind of stressful for me. I don't know. And you know, growing up, I really thought that money would buy me happiness. When you're a kid that grows up struggling and you hear someone say something stupid like, money isn't everything, you think they're a dumbass because you can think of a million problems that would be solved right now if you had some cash. But what I didn't consider back then is that money ain't free. It's quite literally a transactional exchange. You gotta give something up in exchange for money. And if you give up too much, then you end up with more money, but you're left feeling less than before. So I knew deep down that being a product designer was not it for me, but I still wanted to give it another shot because it would just be a waste, you know, to give up a stable, good source of income. So I thought maybe it would be bearable if I work less hours and I work at a company where I get along with the people better. And so I moved companies and I actually really love the people that I worked with, but I'm still part of this system, you know, and the system is the same. So not much changed really, other than that I had more time now to decompress after work, but that's literally all I would do outside of work is decompress. I would go on a walk after work every day and just stare at the horizon and wait for my battery to recharge. But my battery was always at 0. And so I ended up quitting that job as well. And for the past 2 years, I tried a little bit of this and that and made little bits of income here and there, but ultimately it's safe to say that I was unemployed for those 2 years. And recently I also had to move back in with my parents, which is not where I thought I would be at this point in my life. When I was younger, my dream was that by this age I would be the ones taking care of my parents. So it is disappointing, but life rarely goes exactly the way you want it to. And now I'm going to talk about how I felt for the past 2 years after leaving my career. Do I feel liberated and happy? A part of me, yes, for sure. But at the same time, I feel a lot of negative emotions as well. I think I led myself astray a lot for the past couple of years, which led to me ending up in a situation that is not ideal. So let me get into that. After I quit my career, I was very anxious to get back on track, to find a new track and just go. That is pretty hard to do when you're no longer going the conventional path and you have to kind of carve your own path. Something that I only realized recently, like in the past couple months, is that quitting my job was a core trauma for me. Not the quitting part itself, but the fact that I chose a career that ended up not working out for me. The fact that I chose a career that made me miserable. The impact of that trauma was that I used to be someone that was known by everyone around me as someone that just always knows what they're doing. Someone that is very decisive, has a strong inner compass, as you might say. But a few months ago, I saw a therapist for the first time, and I was asking them for their opinion on certain decisions I had to make. And they looked at me and said, "Rooi, do you have trouble making decisions for everything in your life?" And I realized, oh my God, my therapist thinks I'm like an indecisive person. I come off as someone who can't make my own decisions. And it's only in the past couple months that I realized the reason for that is because I blamed myself a lot for making the wrong career decision. I didn't trust myself anymore to decide what to do with my life. Because what if I choose the wrong path again? And that indecision is what plagued me for the past couple years, and is what I would attribute as the main reason why I haven't been able to really get back on track. And I had to work on forgiving myself for basically just not knowing what I know now about how the world works and about myself. I didn't really understand my values as clearly when I was 18, 20 years old. And on top of that, I had to work on accepting the fact that things could not work out again. I could try doing something new and realize that I don't like that, or that I just want to stop at some point. That can happen again, and I just have to accept it. I have to accept that the future is uncertain, even though that is scary as f. I also was lost a lot because this idea that I was on the wrong path and now I need to find the right path, the destination that I need to go to, kind of put me in this trap where I was always so focused on the far future of where I need to end up that I kind of neglected what are the things that I want to do now? What are the things I want to create now? And also, what are the traumas that are holding me back from my past? I think that's one of the things I've struggled with for a long time, is just living so far in the future that I don't realize the immediate things that I can be doing now. It's like if you ever played chess. I haven't played a lot of times and I'm not that good either. But when I play chess, I always mess up because I'm thinking too many steps ahead that I don't realize the immediate threat right in front of me. You know, in high school and in college, there were a lot of days where I thought like today is Monday, but I think it's Tuesday, or sometimes I think it's Wednesday, because I'm just always planning ahead, anxious about the future. You know, my MBTI, I know some of y'all hate that shit, but my MBTI is J, which means I'm a planner. So sometimes I can get too caught up planning for the future, even when I plan out the future and feel so certain about it, like I was so certain about becoming a product designer, sometimes it doesn't fucking work out still. So now I'm trying to be more balanced and not take planning way too seriously. Another thing about quitting my career was that because this is not the default approved path of society, not a lot of people understand this decision. Most people don't relate to these reasons for quitting. Most people don't relate to having these values in life. I do understand where they're coming from, because I didn't know that things like creative freedom mattered so much to me. To a lot of people, that can sound so pretentious, I guess, that it's hard to believe that that's like actually something that people will live for and die for. There are people who care about it even more than I do. A lot of people, they're kind of quick to invalidate my reasons for quitting and instead attribute my decision to my mental health issues, which I do struggle with anxiety and depression. It's on and off depending on the period of my life. But people think that if I'm able to fix these problems that I have, that I'll be good to go and ready to ship back to the corporate world, and I'll be able to make peace with being a cog in the machine. And I think it's pretty ironic because a lot of times these same people, they hate when you're using your mental health as a crutch. And yet in this situation, here they are attributing my decisions to my mental health issues, even though I am not. My hypothesis is that my mental health is a symptom and not a cause. It's probably very unusual to not have mental health issues when you live in a world and a society which encourages and is fueled off values that are in direct conflict with yours. Another thing that I felt a lot after quitting is guilt. I come from a low-income immigrant household, and my parents are the type of Asian parents that don't tell their kids I love you or hug their kids, but their love language is making you food and sacrificing their whole life for you. All my parents really wanted was for me to live a life that they couldn't live. And so they were so happy when I got into MIT. They were so happy for me that I had broken out of our socioeconomic status. And so when I was making the decision to quit, I felt bad because I felt like it wasn't just me that worked hard for this. I was throwing away all the hard work and sacrifices that my parents made for me. And I still do feel guilty and I want to be doing more for my parents. At the same time, I feel so so grateful that I'm able to rest like this and take time to figure out my life, because not everybody has this option. And I also feel so grateful because my parents, my mom especially, has been so supportive. She relates to being a girl with dreams, and she knows what it feels like to live with unfulfilled dreams. So she's always said that she wants me to chase my dreams and not give them up. And I'm very grateful for that. So what is the plan? What am I up to now? My short answer is, I don't know. For the first time in my adult life, I'm admitting to myself that I don't know. And surprisingly, admitting that makes me feel less lost in life. Right now, I want to focus on the things that matter to me now and what I can do now. And I can't be unemployed living with my parents forever, so I'll have to figure those technical things out. But for now, I'm going to appreciate the fact that I might not have money, but I do have time and energy. When I was a product designer, I had money, but no time and no energy. So I want to make the most of that while I have it. Yeah. That's it. Thank you guys always for your support. You guys have been so wonderful, leaving such kind comments, and I really appreciate that. And I appreciate everyone's support, even if it's not through a comment. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.